Ready? Hey, everybody. Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Group, and Fort Worth Memories political groups, all the groups. It's Tuesday, a little bit after 10. We're sorry. We had difficulties with technology. Rick and Mary are here, and Rick is our guest today.
I'm the guest. How about that?
How about that?
How about that?
You know, it's a funny thing about when you're the host of a show and you take a lot of pictures at all these events. You always seem to be on the other end of the microphone or the other end of the camera instead of being the focus.
And I kind of keep a low profile. I try to.
You do.
Kind of in the back.
Yeah.
And that's been hard. Recently, I started having some other shooters go with me. And it's kind of nice to be able to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm so focused in on just taking pictures.
Right.
So
exactly. You know, you when you're behind that camera, you're not getting to hear the stories.
That's right.
That you're taking pictures of.
That's right.
So that's one of the neat things about, you know, I don't know if people have seen the pictures at the roll call luncheon. So, and if you haven't, we post those pictures every month on our webpage. So people can go to roll-call.org and you'll actually get to go and see each month's luncheons because they're out there. And then you can see the magic that Rick picks up with his camera and the faces of the veterans and what's happening. And it's so cool. But the challenge for you is you don't get to hear the stories they're talking about while you're on the other end of that camera.
And that's what's nice about bringing them here to listen to their stories.
Right.
I can kind of get tuned into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because just like with Lucky Luckadoo.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just watched a YouTube video about him the other day and think, man, I bet he told little stories.
Right.
While I was there. So yeah, you're right. I'm on the back side of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get my picture made too often. I do some selfies with people sometime. And every once in a while, I think that picture that I used for the promo, I found it the other day. Somebody had taken a picture of me at Ernie LaCroix whenever he had his 100th birthday. Somebody had posted that picture of me taking a picture. But, you know, I wanted to kind of tell about a little bit about my Army experience, you know.
Absolutely.
Because I was in the Army. Yeah, I grew up in Fort Worth on the east side of Fort Worth and went through the 6th grade, lived in the same house. And then the summer between the 6th and 7th grade, we moved to the west side. And we moved on Birchman Avenue, just right off of Montgomery Street. So I was just 6 blocks from the original Birchman Baptist Church. And whenever we moved over there, I didn't know anybody. I was going through, you know, going into adolescence.
Hard time.
And it was hard time. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. I started going to Birchman, and that's where I met Brenda Linhart. So Brenda and I had been kind of buddies since the 7th or 8th grade. And
Brenda is amazing. For those of you watching and listening, Brenda is the person that does the food for every roll call lunch. And she's communicating with me yesterday that, and this is the first time I think in a long time I've known what the meal's going to be before Friday when I get there, because we don't talk about that ever. Yeah. Brenda figures out based on the number of people, how much food she needs. And she figures out what she can get that's going to be within that $10 per person. And she said, oh, I'm doing meatloaf for 500.
That's a lot.
And now I realize why I've never done meatloaf before. So I think she's pretty tired, but Brenda is amazing. And to have her as a lifelong friend has to really be special.
And for her to be doing what she's doing, I never would have imagined that.
Oh,
hey, we just had a message. Any update on the Tuskegee? We're still on, right?
As of right now, we're still on for June. That'll be our June luncheon.
June. Yeah. And are we going to try to get?
Our plan is, as long as he's up for it and we can get him out and about, we plan on having him on the show on that Tuesday of the
If not, we'll just have a special edition.
Right. And then hopefully we'll get him on base in a few other places. So we're still working the Tuskegee Airmen. So we'll have more to come.
Them need to be aware of that. I mean, that should be a huge deal.
It should be. We'll see if we can get them involved.
I'm going to interview her Monday week at 8:45 in the morning. So
Yep.
anyway, that'll be great. We're all waiting to. There's how many left? 10.
Not
Well,
many.
my understanding from looking it up on the internet is less than 10.
Wow. So how old? He's 90.
I believe he's 95 or 96.
Yeah.
He
He's a
was
youngster.
he was
And his son lives. One of his sons lives here.
yes, one of our members, one of our roll call members connected us with him because Bruce Watts, our member, works with his son. And so that's how they started talking about roll call and what we did and, the stories we bring. And that's when he said, oh, well, my father. And so the rest
And
of
I was working with his other son in New Jersey.
Yeah.
It was the same guy, though.
It's weird that we were working on it. You were
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah.
Same
Small
deal.
world. Small
You know,
world.
I did. There was one that lived in Grand Prairie, and he was 18 months out on interviews.
Yeah.
And he died 2 months before my interview.
Yeah, we had two of them
Yeah.
at one day. We had two of them at roll call.
Yeah. That was when I was deployed.
Yeah.
That was
So
a
I
special
wasn't there
time.
for that. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But
And for one last thing for me, we don't ever get Rick's sons into the picture, so I'm dedicating. mine.
Uh-oh. You see them scrambling around
Yeah,
back there.
that's our two magicians. So guys, wave to the camera. Yeah,
Aw.
those are the guys that make it happen. We just talk.
that's right. Rick is happy to tell people, I usually show up just before the cameras start to
You came
roll.
in early today.
I got here early.
No,
I
you came in
expected some
early.
trouble.
Yeah.
So, but trouble being interviewing Rick, of
Yeah.
course, because we want to know about Rick and his
Yeah.
story. He's got
Sure.
he's got a pretty good story and as a Vietnam veteran, and I'm
Yeah,
sure he's going to get to
just
it.
a Vietnam era
He was a
veteran,
Vietnam
so
era veteran, but
Yeah.
a lot of people really struggle with that differentiation.
I do. I don't.
Right.
At roll call they kept putting Vietnam veteran, and I'd scratch it out next month.
Right.
They have
right.
Vietnam. And I don't want to make that distinction because I don't want people to think I was over there.
Right.
know,
and I think that's an important thing for people to understand, though, is that there are Vietnam era vets that never served in country. And it's not necessarily because either one of you said, I ain't going. It's because Uncle Sam decides where you're
Yeah,
going to go
that's
and what
exactly
you're
right.
going to do. So it's not the fault of the Vietnam era veteran that didn't serve in
I'm
country.
glad I didn't go.
But
I mean, I'm blessed.
right,
that
you
I
were
didn't go.
blessed.
Yeah.
And
But there's so many, just like that one of our members trying to get his dad on, and he said, I guess that isn't going to work. He doesn't want to talk about it. But I think a lot of that has to do with the way those veterans were treated
Sure.
when they came back.
absolutely.
I mean, when World War I, World War II, everybody was heroes.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
the
Korea,
Viet-
they just kind of forgot about.
they
Everybody
forgot about
forgets about it.
but really,
Right.
we did the veterans of the Vietnam era a huge disservice.
Mhm.
And
Heck, it was still that way in 78 and 79 when I went to basic and tech school and first started my military career, was that people said, don't go anywhere in your uniform. People
Yeah.
don't want to see
yeah.
it. You don't want to talk about it because that taste of Vietnam is still in their mouth. So it really, at some point, didn't matter if you served in country or not. People looked at you differently because you wore that uniform. But for the Vietnam veterans, there is a disconnect even within the community of Vietnam era veterans because those that served in country see themselves differently than the ones that didn't. And I've talked to so many Vietnam era vets that almost feel bad because they did not serve in country. Well, as we all know that have served, you don't get to make those
No,
decisions.
No. They-
a lot of people don't realize too, there was so much politics in that Vietnam War. President Kennedy had put a pullout date. We're leaving. We'll be out of country on this date. He got assassinated when they finally got back to D.C. that night or that morning. Lyndon Johnson said, I need two witnesses. I've got to sign a bill. The bill he signed continued the Vietnam War.
Right. And people don't, because people not watching and listening to this are going to go, well, Vietnam War hadn't started. Oh, Vietnam War started.
Oh, in
Actually,
the 50s.
the French were fighting it.
Right. This thing went on longer than most people in the public even have
Oh,
any
yeah.
idea. So the fact that some folks might be watching or listening and are going, well, that can't be true because Vietnam War hadn't started. The Vietnam War that you saw publicized on television may not have started, but we were in Vietnam long before.
We were called
that.
what? Advisors?
We went in as advisors.
Yeah. They did that to skirt around we're in a war.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and to think, I interviewed Dr. Tron, who was the mayor of Halton City, and he flew side by side with our fighter pilots. And he said off the air, he said, my country is huge. They got one of the best economies in the world now. And we it was destroyed, so.
Yep. So a little lesson on the Vietnam. So we're going to go back to Rick and growing up and how you ended up. Right.
And, I started working when I was 13 years old, started a paper out, and back then I threw for the Star Telegram, and it was 4 a.m, 7 days a week, and 4 p.m, 5 days a week. I was off Sunday afternoon. And at 13 on till I started driving, I threw the Star Telegram. I don't ever remember my mom and dad waking me up to go. I had to be at the corner at 4 o'clock.
Sure.
And I just got up. I only overslept. I can remember one time, and the paper manager woke everybody in the house up knocking on the door. So I didn't oversleep anymore. But then as soon as I got my driver's license, I started working for Buddy's Supermarket. And so I was good at customer service, because Star Telegram, you got to suck up to the people,
right.
Paper had to be on the porch, had to be dry, and when it was raining and stuff like that. So it's good experiences.
Sure.
But I didn't interact a lot with people at school. So, we just had our 50th reunion on the eve of the 51st because of COVID. But it's kind of cool because I went to the 10-year reunion, and then I went to 50-year reunion. But one of my friends, Caroline, she asked me to be on the planning committee and take pictures. So it was kind of nice to go meet those people and see them that I was in class with. I just flew under the radar in high school, but every month I go eat breakfast with a group of guys that were in high school. And it's really kind of satisfying to go back and be part of something that you kind of missed whenever you're young.
Right.
But I remember the first month that I threw the Star Telegram, you had to go collect, and you had to go door to door, and everybody's at home, so it wasn't hard. But you had to pay your paper bill first, and then all the other money was yours. So I made about $60 that first month. And I went down.
Big money.
Yeah, you thought you were in high cotton there, didn't you?
That's the most money I'd ever had. And I went down to Leonard's. I got on the bus one Saturday night, and I went down to Leonard's downtown, and I bought some button-up Levi's because I always had to just get the store brand. And I got some rough out boots. So I was feeling good, making money and stuff. So that was fun. That was some of the stuff that happened whenever I was a kid. And then, I started kind of getting interested in girls. And it was kind of ironic that the first date that I went on was with a little girlfriend I had, and my wife, Susan, she was double dating with us, and she was one of my friends. And then over the course of a year or so, I went on a couple of double dates, and she was with somebody else. But then one night I picked her up from work. We were good friends, and we stopped at the stop sign at the corner, Ashland and Donnelly, right behind it's the southeast corner of Arlington Heights. She lived right down the street, and we kissed.
We're gonna stay G-rated on this.
That's when that love affair started. And we've been married 51 years.
Isn't that
I think that probably in my class of 1971, maybe I have the record for the longest marriage. I'm not sure. I know that Hal J and Ann, or Hal Harbuck and Ann was in my class. They might have been married a little bit longer than me, but I'm not sure. But anyway.
What a story.
Did that. And then in 1972, we got married in February. In September 1972, I got this draft notice. So it was either they were going to start the all volunteer army because the draft was going to end at the end of 1972, I think. And so if I went in the Army, they gave me my choice of MOSs and guaranteed a duty station for 18 months.
Wow.
So I wanted to be in the medical field. So I went to be a combat medic, and I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, which was a pretty cool place for a young kid to live.
It's a beautiful
Sue and
place.
I moved up there. I was up there about 6 or 7 months, and they had figured they kind of oversold the deal. So they said, hey, anybody that has a guarantee, if you want to go to another place, you can go to these other places. And Fort Sill was one of them. Well, it's only 180 miles from here, where it's 700 to Colorado Springs. So I said, let's go to Fort Sill. Well, I went to Fort Sill, and I got this dream job, and it was being a flight medic on a UE helicopter with 4th Platoon, 507th Air Ambulance. I thought, this is cool, And let me just say that, there's only 2 times that I remember seeing a general. One of them, one day, I kind of was good friends with the training officer in the air ambulance unit. And so whenever he was going to go train a pilot or do tests for him and stuff, he'd always say, hey, Rick, come on, go with us. That way, if we had to go on a mission, I'd be there. And so we were flying around one day doing our training mission and went to Love Field and rolled up to one of those restaurants that's right on the tarmac and went in. There was a general in there. We talked to him, and then I saw another general at Monterey whenever the 7th Infantry Division got reactivated. So the whole time I was in the Army, I only saw the general twice. So that's a little bit later, we're going to talk about generals. But I went to Fort Sill. I'd already put in to go to school, the clinical special school, and I was at Fort Carson. So I was only in this unit about 3 months at Fort Sill, and I came down on orders to go to a year-long school in Monterey at Fort Ord. So we moved out there. And one of my schoolmates, he and his wife were both she had been in the Army, and she was going to go back in the Army. And so Sue and I talked, said, that's pretty good, because it's hard to get a job whenever you're a spouse of a military guy, because they know you're going to leave. And so she went in the Army in May of 74. So she went to basic at Fort Jackson, AIT at Fort Jackson, came back. She was a headquarters company at Fort Ord, and it worked out great. We both love the Army. We love being soldiers. Well, she worked for headquarters company. I went to this year-long school, became an LVN, and then I went right into they were reactivating the 7th Infantry Division, so I went to the 7th Medical Battalion and worked there. And we just did stuff, we're getting ready for building up this division. So they give us a whole row of barracks, and we get those all ready and get all settled in. And then they'd say, oh, by the way, we're going to move y'all to the next street. And so these were these World War II barracks. So we'd go, and, they just invested a whole year in teaching me how to be a nurse. And now I was out there painting and tearing down buildings and stuff, but it was fun.
Sure.
And we came down on orders suited to go to Germany. So I put in to go to Germany. But then somehow she came down on some other orders to go to Fort Sill. And so I said, let's go back to Fort Sill, because if we'd gone to Germany, I would have re-upped it. And at that time, I had a real critical MOS. So, it was like a $15,000 bonus in 1974 money. That's big money. And I was going to go get me a Mercedes-Benz right off the factory floor in Germany. That's my plan. Yeah. But then we came down to go to Fort Sill. And so they sent me there as a cook, because they didn't have a slot for clinical specialists. So I show up at the reception station, and they said, you aren't a cook. I said, well, I know that I'm clinical specialist. So they found me a place. I worked at the hospital. And one thing about the Army, and I kid you all the time about the 4-star hotels and everything. I spent one night on the ground in a sleeping bag in the Army, and that was in basic training.
Okay.
Wow. Always had good duty, because I was always, I might be assigned to an artillery unit, like at Fort Sill, but I was always attached to the hospital.
Right.
So it was just good duty all the time.
Yeah.
At Fort Sill, is Geronimo's grave there?
Yes, sir.
Did you see it?
I did. I went there and saw
it. He died there.
He died there. He was incarcerated there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, we loved the Army, and the stuff we did that I did. You had to be pretty accurate to keep people alive, you
Right.
know, because it wasn't like it is now with all the computers and all that. I might have a whole floor with 30 patients. I'm the med nurse. We didn't have all the automatic IV stuff. I had to do the drips, mix the IVs, give all the shots and everything. So it was pretty intense for a 22-year-old
Right.
kid.
And what you did in the military in medical compared to what you could have done with that same training on the outside was always really been a disconnect. And I think they're finally figuring that out, because a person could do like you did, and you were really doing the same work that somebody with a bachelor's in nursing would be doing. But when you came out of the military, you couldn't use it for anything.
And I came out, I was a licensed vocational nurse, came out of the Army and started working in civilian hospitals. And, you know, I was used to starting IVs. I was used to drawing blood gases. I was used to giving insulin.
And they were like, no,
oh, you can't do
this. You could change the sheets and change the bedpan.
Yeah.
Right. And that was such a huge waste of so much training and talent.
It was. And then from the hospital, I went to this dispensary, and there was two of us. We had 17,000 troops we took care of. So we ran sick call, and we'd have, 100 to 200 people every day. So this other fellow and I, we'd have to screen these people. They'd have to be pretty sick to get past us to go see the doc. But we could do x-rays, we'd do minor surgery, things like that, do sutures. And so it was really a good job. But our physician's assistant, Mr. Ford, he liked to fish. And I have this tendency to really suck up good to people. And so we'd finish sick call about noon, and about 2 days a week, Mr. Ford would tell the NCOIC, he said, Rick and I've got to go do some stuff. Well, what we'd have to go do, we'd have to go pick up Mr. Ford's boat and go fishing. So it was a good duty. And whenever I got out and started working on a nursing degree to go back in, because I love the Army so much. But I got so disenchanted working in the hospital. I thought, I'd have to have a master's degree to ever get off the floor, and I'd be pushing bedpans from now on. And my father-in-law had a manufacturing company, so I went to work there and kind of got into manufacturing. I still did some nursing. I got into psychiatric nursing at All Saints, or not All Saints, but what was the hospital over there across from Peter Smith, St. Joseph.
St. Joseph.
Yeah, I love that, because you didn't have to wear a nursing uniform,
That's
street clothes. Hospital, really. And
it's just a shame that you have such a great skill set, and that it really seriously has taken probably until the last 10 years for the civilian sector to catch up and to see the value of all of that training,
the military,
that you couldn't use anymore.
Because our training, I'm biased, but I think our training in the military is a lot better than civilian.
Oh yeah,
because
way better.
We were into it. I mean, we have tests every day, 4 or 5 different classes.
There weren't all these extra classes that you really don't need that you take in the civilian side.
We were in about 8 months, and we already qualified to go take state exam for LVN, and we did. And everybody in my class passed it the first time. I mean, we were good nurses.
Right.
But I got out of the Army. Sue got out of the Army. I got into manufacturing. Worked for General Dynamics. Quit there. Went to work for an explosive company that made downhole explosives. And Sue worked for Pingo, which Gerhardt and Owen, Harold Owen owned Pingo, and then he owned GoEx, the place I worked. And then I went back to General Dynamics and then stayed out there about 33 years. All the while we were doing real estate business too. My mother had started in about 1965, 64. And then we got our license in 84. And so we were doing that. It worked out real good because, I could still do a lot of real estate. Sue would take care of stuff that she needed to take care of. But a lot of people that I helped never knew that I worked someplace full time. And then in the later years, I started working on the second shift. I could have worked on the day shift, but it really worked out good for me.
Right, better.
But a lot of times for several years, it was like being in isolation because I'd be in this huge office complex behind locked doors, and I'd have a little job to do. And If something happened in the factory that I need to take care of, I take care of it. But a lot of times I never see anybody. I never talk to anybody. So it's kind of lonesome. It's kind of like being in a reverse prison.
And I just can't imagine Rick in that situation. That would make him nuts, I think.
Yeah, it did, and that's whenever I got out it's really like, I guess, because you go through a guarded gate to get into a locked door to get it behind another locked door. And, but it was a good job. I enjoyed my time out there, and it was a fun job, and is really interesting job. But then I retired, and I was going to just do real estate full time. And I bought that camera that's right there in front of me, and to do a video vlog like that Gary Vaynerchuk does. And that's the only reason I bought that camera. And I retired in May of 2017. And my niece had worked at Birchman. And she had been telling me about roll call because she had been singing the national anthem at roll call. And she's sending me pictures. And I couldn't wait to go to roll call. So you didn't have one I didn't go in June. You didn't have one in July. The first one I went to was, I think, August the 24th, 2017. I ran into my good friend, Wayne Prosser, World War II guy. I've known him about 40 years, and I ran into him. But I ran into Joe Schneider. Joe Schneider was taking pictures.
Right.
And I walked up and said, "Do you mind if I take?" "Oh, no, go ahead." And he let me take pictures. I posted them on the internet. And
Joe, before that, wasn't letting anybody else take pictures. So it was really kind of odd.
I don't know why.
And we hadn't seen Joe since COVID started, but we understand he's doing okay. Problems, right. Yeah. But we understand he's doing better now.
But he had gone around the world taking pictures of veterans, but he kind of took me under his wing and let me take pictures. I came back the next month, took some more pictures, and people started liking them. But let me back up just a little bit, because the first really veterans organization I ever worked with was Heroes on the Water. And I had bought a kayak, and I found this group that took veterans kayak fishing, and I wanted to be a volunteer. And so there was a vice president at Lockheed that was on their board. So I sent him a text. "I want to be a volunteer." So he gave me some connections, and they sent me a nice email that said, "Thanks, but no thanks. We got plenty of volunteers. You can come fish with us." I want to do this, And so I was on this fishing forum, and this was helicopter pilot from Fort Hood. He was trying to charter a chapter down there. And so I worked with him and chartered a chapter at Fort Hood so I could kind of be involved in this. And then Jim Dolan, and you in the nonprofit world with veterans know Jim Dolan. He started Heroes on the Water. We lost him a few years ago, but he was just a great guy. And one day he called and said, "Hey, we want to start a chapter in Fort Worth. Will you come up here and talk with some other people?" So I helped start a chapter up there, but things got busy, and the leadership, I wasn't as engaged as, it just didn't work out.
Well, being a new retiree, you're still trying to figure out what exactly did you really want to do.
This was kind of before I retired, but I was still involved. I'd still go. I had an old little camera, and I'd take some pictures. But then I went to a Brotherskeepers deal with my brother, Ken. We talked about Brotherskeepers, and I met Terry and Elizabeth Burgess, Gold Star family. Terry was one of our first guests on the show, became friends with them. And then I retired and went to roll call. Well, after I started taking pictures, Terry asked me to go to the retreat and take pictures. And I just fell in love with this group of parents, and they just engrafted me into their group. And from there, that was in 2018. And I met some other people that were pretty instrumental, that went to the Gold Star Parents Retreat. And then in October, one of my Heroes on the Water friends asked me to go to Skyball. They used to have like 3 days. And so on Friday night, they had this barbecue. He wanted me to take some pictures because one of our friends was going to get an award. Well, I'd been going to roll call, so I knew Fisk, and I saw Fisk kind of getting wheeled into the VIP area. And I had my camera, And I went up to the lady and said, I'm with him. Can I go? Oh, yeah. So I go in the VIP area. And that's where I took that picture of Fisk where he's got his hat over his heart, during the Star Spangled Banner. But whenever I saw Skyball, I thought, I don't know how all this works, but one day I want to start being involved in Skyball. And so that led to some other stuff. And that was in October. And then in November the 11th this was 2018, we were going to have, we're going to be in the Veterans Day Parade. So November 11th, I'm going down to the Veterans Day Parade. I stop at the Whataburger on the freeway right there, right up here at Montgomery
and
Street.
30.
And I go in, I order my food, and I see this guy, and he's with his family. And he's got this ring on his trigger finger, and he's got this 22 kill shirt on. And so I went and started talking to him. I said, my name's Rick Irving. I said, I saw you get this 22 kill shirt on. He said, my name's Dan Lombardo. And he said, I'm the chairman of the board of 22 Kill. I said, man, that's kind of cool. And so we started talking, had breakfast. And now every Veterans Day, we meet up there and have breakfast before we go to the parade. But from Dan had helped me so much because he introduced me to so many people. I started doing some photography work for 22 Kill, which is now One Tribe. And then he introduced me to Sheena Sharapata, and she does a lot of clay shoots. She does it for Light Up to Live. So I got to meet Randall Reed and his team, and Mary's very familiar with Light Up to Live. And then the Sons of the Flag. And I didn't know
another great group
recently until Sons of the Flag are a big supporter of roll call.
Absolutely.
And then the
whole reason that we have the flag set up. They provided the flags. Yeah.
And then Dan introduced me to Bill Wayborn. And just right next door here, we had a deal with Bill Wayborn for his campaign. And I took pictures, and there was another fellow there. His name was Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. And his campaign people were there. His chairman of his campaign was there. This was when he was running for the state GOP. And so I talked to them, and I started doing work for them and then I met a whole lot more people. And then I met a lot of people through Bill, and still do Bill's campaign. But it's just all these little things that happen that it's just like this network opens up, because I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to do this. It just happened.
Right.
And so then Skyball 2018 comes along, and I go to that. And, by this time, I've met General Pottinger and some other people, Wanda Cox. And so I start kind of knowing them a little bit. But also in that year, I think it was that year, I saw this deal, War Stories, and it was with the Airpower Council. And so I sent them an email. I said, I'd like to go. They said, oh, come on down. And so I went to this War Stories, and it was with the Fort Worth Airpower Council, and they had some old veterans, and I took some pictures, and I went home and sent them to Tal Milan, who was the chairman, and he thanks a lot. And he sends me an application to join the Airpower Council. Man, this is kind of cool. But this was like in January. And so I got around the 1st of April, I kept thinking, I don't know about this, There's some heavy hitters in that deal. And they only let 200 people in, I don't know that I want to do this or not. So I sent my application in. And later in April, after I became a member, I went to Fort Hood with a group of Airpower people and got to know Mo Baker, and I got to know Wanda Cox and a lot of people, and it just opened up another avenue.
Yeah.
Because, it was the Airpower Foundation and the people with the Airpower Council too. And
two different organizations, but they work together a lot.
And, it took me a long time to figure out who's who and what's what. It's just not like cut and dry. So those are just some of the things that happen to get just more of the network going. Also in 2000, I think it was 2018, I was at a Dallas Cowboy game with Mitchell Bell, and he was telling me about this organization, Helicopters for Heroes. And I said, I really would like to go there. And he just gets his phone out and says, here, this is Phil Brooks. He's the one that started it. He said, hey, Phil, this guy wants to talk to you. And so I talked to Phil Brooks. And he said, oh, yeah, just send me a text and I'll let you come in. And so I started doing pictures for them. So 2018, 2019, there was just a lot of stuff going on in my life that just, I think one year I did about 90 different organizations. And, just one thing about working with different organizations is you don't only see just the people of the organizations. A lot of times you see who they're helping.
Right.
And then you see how they run their organizations. Because, there's some organizations that I frankly just don't want to be involved with because of the way they do their business.
Right. Absolutely.
But I think it's 2019 probably is whenever Carrie or Ortigal contacted me to do the Holidays and Heroes. And then I'd been working with General Pottinger and Ann on their Freedom Mobility Foundation as it was getting started, taking pictures. So I started doing helicopters for, not the Holidays in
There's
Heroes.
So many, it's hard to keep track
so
of them
many.
all. But yeah, Holidays and Heroes is amazing.
And I went to that first gift giving, and I thought, this is one of the ones that I don't ever want to miss.
Right.
Because it's just so special. That and the Gold Star Parents Retreat. Those are two organizations that I just don't ever want to miss.
Yeah, because at some point, right, a lot of people that do what we do, that get involved, we tend to get involved in a lot of things. Like I can remember years and years ago when I started getting involved in stuff, and it seemed like I was getting involved in so many things that finally I thought, you know what, I'm not doing any of them a service because I can't focus on
stretch too thin.
Right.
Yeah.
At some point you just have to realize that you have to stop and you have to say, okay, so what is really the most important? And I still do that today. I learned that sometimes saying no helps you do a better job for the things you say yes to. So that it's not about the number of things that you get involved in. It's about
the quality.
Right. Are you picking the things that really have the purpose and that you align with and that you want to do stuff with and going deep? Or are you just shallow and hitting a lot of things? In which, in some cases, like for roll call, it's a real benefit to us that you have all those connections. So I see it as a God thing, right? That you're a part of roll call and you have all these connections through all this networking that you've done. And now, even though you might not be on their board or you might not be going in a deep direction with some of them, you still know them and they know you, so that when it comes time that we want to find ways to connect, because there's a lot of organizations we can connect with, 100 Vets That Give a Damn. A lot of people don't know about them. And what a great organization that they bring people together every quarter to help raise money for different groups. And you go and you listen to the three groups that present.
5 minutes.
You decide if you're going to contribute to them or not. And what a great thing and what a great event. But you get to decide where do you want to really focus your attention, but you can still bring us together with these other groups. And I think that it's so important to us as roll call to have you because of those. I look at it as a spider web. As you talk about the different groups, all I can see is a spider web forming.
Oh, yeah.
And it just, how a spider web, unless you do something with it, it's just going to keep growing, right?
Yeah, and at that 100 Vets That Give a Damn, the first time I met Lou Duckwall was at the 100 Vets That Give a Damn. And he was Patriot Anglers. He's a founder of them. And then General Pottinger and Freedom Mobility, we've done some things with them, taking some of our amputees and our wounded warriors up to Broken Bow to fish with them. And it's just those little deals, because Lou reminds me so much of Jim Dolan that started. He passed away. I've seen Lou. And you see these guys that had this thought, had a dream, and turned it into action and started helping people. And then with a lot of these organizations like Gold Star Parents Retreat or Patriot Anglers, they started because of some real crisis in the founders' lives.
Right.
And they could either kind of withdraw and not do anything, or they could turn that into positive energy and help other people that are going through that, with Lou and the post-traumatic stress, and with Terry and Elizabeth, and helping other parents who've lost children. So, it's been a real journey. Another thing was whenever Ernie LaCroix, he just turned 104 the 22nd of February. He was a pilot in Europe, and for his 100th birthday, and not my 100th birthday then, but we share birthdays, he was doing the 5K.
The Cowtown.
And I went down there to take pictures for him. And the 5K people came up there and said, "You're going to need a media pass. So here's a media pass." So I got that media pass. And then the next month, Golden Gloves comes along, and I think, I wonder if they'll let me in and give me a media pass. So I go to Golden Gloves, I take my camera, because a lot of organizations don't like people showing up with a big camera. So I go there and I say, "I'd like to talk to somebody about taking pictures." And so this little girl came up, and I introduced her, and she said, "Come with me." So I go down the ringside and I meet Monica Mason, the president of the Texas Golden Gloves. I said, "I'm Rick Irving, I'm a photographer, and I'd like to take pictures." And she said, "Oh, good." She said, "Come right here. You said here's a pass to get in." I looked at it. It's for the regional and state, and here's a parking pass, And I'm thinking, when I was a kid, the Golden Gloves had all these photographers around here, and here I'm sitting right ringside, and I'm the only guy there with a camera.
Yeah.
And so that just opened up a whole new deal.
Yeah, and those pictures you take are just great too.
But in this journey that I've been on, I didn't hold myself out as a photographer for a long time, and finally found out that maybe I'm a photojournalist, because I become a visual storyteller, because I would try to compare myself to other people, and that just wasn't working. And then I'd think, well, am I doing this right or am I doing it wrong? But people like it, so it doesn't matter. It's Rick's way.
That's
so
right.
It works.
That's right.
And so I got comfortable just doing what I do, and I don't care what because I don't know that much about photography. I just take pictures.
Well, I would say your pictures don't say that you don't know much about it, because your pictures are fabulous.
You put those up in front of some real photographers, and they look at this, look at that. But people like their pictures, And with the Golden Gloves, there's so many, I've got a lot of young friends that are on Facebook, social media, that really are good friends. And these are kids that we don't have anything in common outside of that, and taking their pictures. And to see them using my pictures for their profile pictures and sending their pictures out that I take, that's rewarding to me. But I just kind of tried to get where I was comfortable doing what I do, and we had Jeremy Locke sitting here last week, 7 times the
photojournalist of the year.
A magnificent guy. He does what he does, and he does it well.
Right.
And so I'm not competing with him. I'm just competing with me. I want to take the best pictures I can take. So that's kind of where my journey has gone. And I'm getting where I don't take on as much as I used to. Last year I did 45 different organizations, about 90 events, but this year I'm really reducing that. But a couple of weeks ago, I was at Helicopters for Heroes, and in the evening they have a program. The lights are kind of low, and then they have an auction and stuff. And so I found one of these little bar type tables, kind of back in this corner. I was sitting there, and man, I just had this wave of emotions. I'm not a guy that cries a lot, but I was just sitting back there crying. Here I go. Because I thought, there's going to be one day pretty soon that I'm not going to be coming here to take pictures.
Yeah.
And I hope that I can come back and just sit in the corner.
And I'll bet you can.
I hope so.
I'm sure you can.
But you got to come to that realization. So I'm trying to find some other people that are interested in doing some of the stuff I do, so I can kind of pass it on and let other people do it. Because I know a lot of times I'll go to these galas and stuff, and they'll see this old crippled man with the camera, thinking that poor old guy, he's just here to try to make a buck to supplement his retirement. But I'm not a hired gun, so I don't charge for what I do. A couple of organizations, they say, hey, we want to pay you, but I'll take that, or I'll donate to somebody. But it's been a fun experience, and I've gone from there to having this show here where we bring other people, just like the Hope Farm.
Yeah.
And seeing people like that, they didn't go fight a battle. They weren't in the military. They didn't do the stuff that some of us did, but they're fighting a battle every day.
Right.
Sure.
For the
and they're
lives,
making a difference.
for the lives
right?
of our children.
And the lives of when those children grow up, they're going to affect generationally. They're going to affect people. And so I think that's
going to save our country.
Right. The point of Hometown Heroes, and I know you and Larry were talking about it much longer than you and I were talking about it, because when you came to me about it, and it was kind of like, yeah, okay, well, Rick says good idea. So it is. But the idea that, you two talked about for as long as you said that you talked about it was really bringing the community together for how do we help each other. So we're not, because there's a lot of organizations that do a lot of stuff, right? And so I know I've had this conversation with a few people about, you've got these different groups that they'll take wounded warriors hunting or fishing. Okay, but what if I'm not a wounded warrior? What if I don't have PTSD? What's out there for me? And if I am wounded and you're going to take me hunting or fishing once a year, then what about the rest of the year? What's happening and what am I doing? And so you could see that there's a lot of resources, but people might only know about that one resource that they're used to or that they know about that they're using. Whereas there are a vast number, as we've tried to show on this particular show, is how many different organizations are out there that can help you. What if it's you went on your trip with Heroes on the Water, and for the next month you were on that high, but then the PTSD or whatever started to get to you again, and now you're thinking about possibly suicide. So, how do we connect them with one tribe? And it's all these different pieces of how do we bring these groups together to just be really holistic, right? And I think that's important.
Yeah, that's the whole key to it, is because everybody's doing something different, but to bring them all together.
Right.
But one thing they do have in common, they're all trying to raise funds.
Right.
They need money and they need volunteers.
Absolutely.
And so, we have a clay shoot coming up in October.
We do.
At Defender Outdoors. I forgot the date. Is it 15th? I
believe so.
Yeah. And we need sponsors for that. We need shooters for that.
Right.
I know that Freedom Mobility Foundation, they're a nonprofit partner with Carry the Load this year. So we need teams that might want to go do the walk or the ruck at Carry the Load. And that's at the Memorial Day weekend in Dallas. We have a little rally in Fort Worth, and the Sunday and Monday is the Carry the Load. So Freedom Mobility needs some help there. And then, also they've got a golf tournament coming up, I think, in November. So there's a lot of things out there that that we need help with as far as money goes. So
Yep. And definitely, we want to make sure that this is going to be our first attempt at a clay shoot. So for roll call to raise the funds to do the monthly luncheon. And when we say we're full this month, I turned in 490 to Brenda for food, and our max capacity is 500. And I don't like to try to go to that max capacity, because all it takes is a few people showing up going, no, I definitely need to be here. And, that's the thing with us, is we do this every month. Or a lot of people do an event where they're planning and preparing, and they've got a whole year to plan for next year's event. Well, we don't have that. We have an event every single month. We have an
ongoing expense,
and it's a constant. And so in order for us to continue that mission that we think is so important, of bringing people together so that they can talk and they can get through some things. And I know before the show, we were talking, Larry, about a young man and not wanting to share his story from Vietnam. But as Rick and I said, you bring that person to a roll call lunch, we know that we can put them at a table with a couple of other Vietnam veterans that flew helicopters, because Lord knows we have plenty of them.
Yes.
There were so many helicopter people back then, that we can put him strategically at that table, and all of a sudden they find that it's not so scary to open those doors, because now I'm talking with somebody else who's been there, done that, got that t-shirt. And so this is why it's important to us what we do, and why it's just so different from what a lot of people do. But that clay shoot will be our first attempt. So help us make it a success. If you are a business and you want to be a sponsor, reach out to us through info@roll-call.org. We'll hook you up with our fundraising chair and get you going. But we need those sponsors. We need folks that if what you can do, if you're in the business of some kind of food business and you can contribute on the food side, you can sponsor that way. So there's any number of ways. There's not just financial, but there's other ways that you can provide support through auction items and, things of that nature.
Just need to get involved.
Just, I've not been to I did go to a clay shoot. I was at part of a clay shoot with Light Up to Live. So I at least got to see, parts of it, but I haven't actually been through the entire thing. Now I have worked lots of golf tournaments. So I know how to get people registered and all that kind of stuff.
Not much difference in a clay shoot and a golf tournament.
Now we're on money and veterans. Don Graves, we need to raise the money to send him to
Ireland
for his birthday? 98th birthday.
So
tell us how we can do that, Mary.
So we are, so speaking of Don, say just a little prayer for Don tomorrow morning. He's going to have a little minor eyelid surgery. He needs to get that taken care of to protect his cornea. So that's going to happen tomorrow morning. So say a little prayer for Don. He'll turn 98 on May 3rd. His desire has been to go back where his family roots are in Ireland. And of course, we had Jeremy on the show, and Jeremy is working that particular trip. Last week when we were here, they had raised about 11,000 of 35,000 that they felt that it would take to do this trip. And this week, I looked this morning when I got here, and they're up about 4,000 from where we were last week. So we're heading in the right direction. But if you are interested in helping make Don Graves' dream come true, go to just Google Don Graves GoFundMe, and that'll bring you right to it. Or you can go to the Last Letters podcast, and you can link to it from there. But the easiest way is just Google Don Graves GoFundMe.
And Jeremy said it's going to be a live stream.
Yeah.
He is. He's going to, because, he and Scott, the two people that work together and, produce and do all the things that they do to make the multiple different projects that they do happen. Those guys are just amazing, and they're going to document it and stream it and everything, the whole journey. So anybody that contributes that wants to know what's going on, they'll have basically live updates and every, yeah, absolutely going to be phenomenal. I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm not going on the trip, but
it'd be a fun trip to go on.
It would, but I did the whole finals thing when trying to do college finals when I took Don to Pearl Harbor in December, and I can't do that again. Not with the classes I have this semester. I just can't do it again. So got to finish up my school. But anyway, so GoFundMe for Don, all these other great organizations, you find what matters to you, what fuels you, and support that organization, whatever it is.
I'll list a lot of organizations that I work with after the show. But, you do all this stuff and you wonder what kind of impact it has. But, I take my grandson Sterling with me to a lot of different events.
The world's greatest
grandson
yes.
named Sterling.
That's right.
And, we wonder what impact we have on our children. And several months ago, he was the student of the month at his school. And I've shared this on social media before, but along with him being the student of the month, there was a letter that the teacher wrote, and it says Sterling, and the deal was about brains, heart, and courage was the theme of this award for being the student of the month. It says Sterling's brains, heart, and courage shine through every day because he comes to school every day with a great attitude and a smile. Always an amazing, interesting story to tell. He's a true patriot and has more respect and patriotism for our country than most adults. He spends a lot of time outside of school at veterans events and loves sharing what he knows and learns with others. He's such a little gentleman. He's constantly straightening up and fixing things for me, always without being asked. But that part about him being a patriot and being more patriotic, that's because he goes to roll call. That's because he goes to different places and he's around a lot of great Americans.
That's right.
And we need to get our children exposed to the greatness of these people that have served our country.
Amen.
Because they're going to be the people that are going to lead our country in years to come.
Yes.
So that's why we do what we do.
Absolutely.
I hope you have enjoyed today a little bit about how I got doing what I was doing, because I never planned for all this to happen, but it's been a fun gig.
Yeah.
I get to go to a lot of places and meet a lot of people.
And I get to go with them sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they retire and they stay home, and then we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
Then you just stay at home.
Yeah.
I think I had a lot of friends retire, and none of them made it a year. And I said, I'm never doing that.
Yeah, you have to find purpose. You
Yeah.
absolutely have. Once you retire, and we're all at that point in life, and once you retire, you need to find that purpose. You need to find what really matters to you. And then you've got to get involved. And that, I think that if you do that, and that's what I know about a lot of people. And I know that one of the things Don always says is that when you quit moving, you quit moving.
That's right.
Yeah. And besides your body doing whatever, your mind, you're thinking it's purpose. You're at night, you're saying, oh, I got to do this at roll call. I got to do this is coming up. And that, because we've done that for all of our adult lives in working, and then you just shut everything off and your body's saying, what the hell's going on?
Right. Yeah. Well, I was with roll call when I retired, and then I became a full-time college student, and when I finish this semester, I'll have one more semester, and I'll have 2 more bachelor's degrees on top of what I already have. But people go, people are like, well, why do you keep doing it? And I'm like, well, mostly to burn up GI Bill and keep my brain active, because that's the other thing that we lose as we age, right? Is that if we quit learning, if we're not lifelong learners, and I think that's part of what we do as we get with these other groups, is we might not be in a college class, but we're learning about what they're doing and we're hearing people's stories and our brains are staying very active. And I think that that's important too.
And we're sharing their stories.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
And that's what I try to do.
And they stay alive.
With what I do is to share the story of these different organizations. But you're right about, keeping active. And I worked with a surgeon whenever I lived in Monterey, California. And right there, the gray whales migrate. Every once in a while, we'd have a beach whale, and they die. And so that's what, whenever somebody has surgery, they want to get them up and start moving,
Right.
And that surgeon would say, you got to get them up. You know what
Right.
happens to a beached whale? They die.
Right.
Same thing with retirement. You go just sit down, you're going to die.
Yeah,
earlier,
you're going to die quick too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's not my plan.
No, I want to live.
plan.
I want to live forever or die trying.
Yeah. Somebody once said to me that, I know I was when I was going through certification to become a personal trainer, and I was out there at the Cooper Institute, and Mr. Cooper himself was there. And I think he had just recently wrote one of his books, and he said this was his plan. He was going to live, die suddenly. And I said, that's
a good plan.
That's how I want to go out. I want to live, die suddenly.
Yeah.
Just
not wake up
at an old age.
We were at this place. It was a place. I'm not going to say where it was, but it was a place that honored veterans. And this guy, he worked there, and we were there, and he just dropped dead. I'm thinking, it was horrible that he died, but here's a veteran giving back to other veterans, and he died doing it,
That's perfect.
And it's probably the way he will want to go.
That's it.
Larry, thank you for having us today.
Well, my pleasure as always.
And
we should have started it before we did, but just I
did.
Get compliments all the time on it. People say that show really.
I do too.
It hits home with a lot of people because there's not shows like this anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
No. And next week we're going to have Paige Short. Gosh, I can't say her last name. Anyway, she's with the Las Vegas Trail Initiative, the LVT Rise, and she's going to tell us what they're doing. Paige, I'll tell them your last name next week. But
yeah,
we're going to find out.
I got tongue tied.
We're going to find out more about that. I'm going to go out there with her tomorrow. She's going to take me around because that's a high crime area, and the city and the state have done a lot of things to help make that a better place. And Paige is the director of it. So
super,
very cool.
Good. Mary, thank you for being here today.
And I didn't make you cry. You made yourself cry.
Well,
so one of the things Rick told me before we came today was I couldn't make him cry, but he did it himself.
Don't make me cry.
It gets emotional sometimes.
Yeah, it does.
Classic auto detail. I was thinking today about, I'm with these guys and these boards and stuff, and all these places, they put so much emphasis on and money on websites, but not on social media where all the eyes are. And so I thought, I wonder if Larry's got a website. I couldn't find a website.
No.
But you've got 180,000 people that follow you.
Yeah.
Because that's where the eyes are.
Yeah.
That's where these guys that don't know anything about social media need to start shifting some of that money and some of that stuff over to social media instead of
right.
I tell people
that's where all the
time,
marketing's happening.
Donald Trump won a presidency with a cell phone.
That's right.
That's where all the marketing is happening these days is on social
if you're
media.
On printed advertising, all that's being thrown away.
Well, even websites, it's hard to get folks to go to websites. So you've got to link them through your social media pages. That's how you do it.
It's like getting a little squirrel eat out of your hand. You
set
just
carrot.
have to dangle that carrot, get them up there, and then you can go over to look at the website.
Have you ever been out to Barnes' place and seen the little squirrel that the owner has? He's a friend of mine. And the little squirrel, come here, boy. And that little squirrel just comes over there. It's the damnedest thing I said, how do you know it's the same one? He said, he's wearing a deal. And he did. I mean, and he stays out in the park at night. And then when this guy's, I guess he's still with us. When he walks down in the mornings, a
little
squirrel comes up. He'll eat right out of your hand. Dangest thing I ever saw.
That's where my chickens are. I walk out there and they come running to me, you know.
Yeah.
But thank you for hosting us.
Yes.
Classic Auto Detail. Give Larry a call and get your car detailed. Dusty and Tyler, thank you all. And thank all the great organizations out there that are doing so much good for our veterans, our military, our first responders. You're doing a good job. We'll see you next week on Hometown Heroes.